Well, what's up guys? This is a little bit of a different video. I just recorded this and realized that my mic was muted the entire time, and it is almost 2 in the morning, but I like you guys, and this is a different video, so I'm gonna do it again. I'm an insane person. But yeah, this is a little bit of a different video. I know for some of y'all this isn't gonna be new information, but the game's crossplay now. It's on console. I've been seeing a lot more low ranked players. I've been seeing a lot of people that don't seem to know what they're talking about but talk like they do, and they're leading more people blind into the game, and I don't want that. I want people to have a decent understanding of things, and hopefully I can provide that in this video. Basically, I'm just going to be going over little things you can pick up on from each ghost, ways to identify them, what forced evidence is, smudge timers, all that kind of stuff. Let's get straight into it. So I'm just going to preface this and say I will not be reading what's on the right side here. Most of this is misleading information and does not actually affect gameplay, or not in the way that it is worded. It's just convoluted nonsense, so I wouldn't pay much attention to this. But first off, we have Spirit. The Spirit is going to be very active when you are in its room. However, there's overlap with this, so I wouldn't pay that much mind, but it can definitely come in handy. However, the much bigger point is that a Spirit has a unique smudge timer, basically, and that is 3 minutes. So a smudge timer basically is when you smudge the area near the ghost, whether it's hunting you or if you saw it in a motion sensor while it was roaming and you smudged near it then. But primarily people will do it during a hunt because then you know that it's, being aggressive enough to hunt and it will hunt again. Um, if you do that and the ghost does not hunt for 3 minutes afterwards, so after the 3 minute mark, it is a good indicator that it can be a spirit. However, some ghosts might just choose not to hunt. Um, you might not meet other requirements that they might have to trigger them to hunt more often, like a yokai talking near it. We'll get into that. Um, but it can be a good indicator. It can lead you in the right direction, and if it does that more than once, it's fair to say it probably is, and if it ever hunts before that, you can say it definitely isn't. So, very nice there with the Spirit. Next up we have the Wraith, and this one is simple. The Wraith will never touch Salt. So if you place Salt on the ground, the ghost will occasionally walk into it. It'll make stomping sounds, and then there will be indicators of a foot in the Salt. Whether there's UV or not, you'll see an imprint of a foot, like a shoe or something, in the Salt. The Wraith will never leave those imprints, but it will still walk over the Salt. So if you put a motion sensor, let's say you put the Salt in a doorway and you put the motion sensor on the other side of the doorway from where the ghost's room is, and you see it get in the motion sensor, but it never touched that Salt, it's probably a Wraith. It's definitely a Wraith, especially if you know it had to have touched that Salt. Tier 2 Salt can help with this because it places in a line and it can go straight across doorways, so you know it would have touched that Salt. If it ever touches Salt, you know it's not a Wraith. Wraiths also tend to be kind of teleporty and might just do things near a player, far away from their room, but that's only on occasion. The Salt thing is the biggest part. Next up we have Phantom. This one is also easier to identify. So I'll start off with the smaller things. The Phantom will drain your sanity over time while you spend time near it. Go to the wiki for the exact percentage, but it drains a percent of your sanity over time, every time it procs while you're near it. But the biggest thing is that the Phantom will not appear in any photos taken of it. So this is a bit weird because if I'm the person that takes a photo, and this could be a photo of anything in the game, it will not appear to my teammates the way it appears to me in the photos section here. But if I take the photo of the ghost and it does not appear in the photo, it is probably a phantom. Especially if the ghost is doing a ghost event. If I take a picture of a phantom during a ghost event, it will not appear in the photo, and the event will instantly end as soon as I take that picture of it. This is a telltale sign that it is a phantom. And another big thing is every ghost while it is hunting will blink, it'll flash. This basically means the ghost will go invisible for a period of time and then reappear. Every ghost does this, it's on a random interval, sometimes it'll blink more than others, but the Phantom's thing is that it'll spend more time invisible between those blinks. So the ghost will go invisible, then it'll appear, then it'll go invisible, then it'll appear. The Phantom loves to be in that invisible state and will spend over a second sometimes in that state, making it very dangerous, very hard to see. Definitely stay safe around this ghost and use that to your advantage to determine it. The Poltergeist. This one's a bit tricky, but basically it is well known for erupting with items. So what players will like to do is they'll go to the ghost room with a bunch of items that the ghost can manipulate, like shoes and plates and cups and knives and forks and all that stuff, and they'll make a big pile of it in the ghost's room where the ghost likes to walk a lot, like a high traffic area in the ghost room. If it ever throws more than one of the objects in that pile at the same time, or if the pile ever erupts and everything all at once gets thrown and it sounds like a bomb going off, it's a poltergeist. Another thing you can do is you can find a place to loop the ghost, like a couch or a table, and you can set the items up on that object and kind of spread them out along the object and just watch how much the ghost throws them, from how far away he is to the items and still throws them, and how far away the items get thrown, how many of them at a time and how often. And the more you see it, the more you play it, the more you'll know, like, okay, this is a poltergeist. It's a little bit tricky at first, but with time comes the knowledge. At number 5, we have the Banshee. The Banshee telltale sign is with a parabolic microphone. The parabolic mic, if you don't know, basically there's a cone that gets put out, and any sound within that cone when the parabolic is turned on will be amplified, and it allows you to hear ghosts make these whispering sounds. The Banshee has a chance, I think it's 33%, refer to the wiki of course, it has that chance to make a screaming sound into the parabolic mic. If this ever happens, it's a Banshee. Or it's a mimic mimicking a Banshee, but that would be terribly unlucky. I would just say it's a Banshee. The Banshee will also choose a target and will sometimes even initiate its hunt from on top of the target, events from on top of the target, and do interactions near the target. This is determined at random, and if whatever the target is, if they spend enough time outside the building, the target will change. I'm not sure if that's temporary or until the target comes back into the building. Refer to the wiki. But when it has a target, if you are not the target, you can walk through the ghost and you will not die. It is a banshee. Um, this is a dead giveaway. The scream, being able to walk through it and not dying. It doesn't seem to care about you and follow you and go your direction, even though it should have because you were closer to it than the person it's chasing. All of that makes it a banshee. Also, they like to do singing events a lot. So if they do events and they're like singing every time, booyah. Next up, we have the Jinn. The Jinn has a few giveaways. One is that it'll never turn the breaker off. So this does not include turning on too many lights, which can bust the breaker. So if the breaker's on and your team turns on too many lights, it can short circuit the breaker and it'll turn off. This can still happen even if it's a Jinn, but the ghost will never turn the breaker off. It might touch the breaker door, it might leave EMF 2 on the breaker, but it will never turn the breaker off. And it can also be more likely to turn it on, but this is not really, you know, very viable because any ghost might just choose to do that at will. You don't really know. But the biggest thing is its actual ability. Its ability needs to meet all 3 criteria and then it will proc, and that is it needs to be farther than 3 meters from the player, it needs to have line of sight of the player, and the breaker needs to be on, and then it will go towards that player at an increased speed until any of those criteria are not met. So if the breaker's on, it has line of sight, and it is farther than 3 meters from the person it's chasing, and it then loses line of sight, or um, the or well, I guess you wouldn't be able to turn the breaker off, I don't think. But yeah, it loses line of sight, or it gets closer than 3 meters, and then it slows down. Then it's probably a Jinn. It'll be very fast when that ability is procced, but you might not know exact speeds yet, and there's a lot of variables to that. But if it then suddenly slows down, it might still have line of sight speed, but it'll suddenly slow down because it lost its proc. Then it's a Jinn. But if it ever turns the breaker off, it's not a Jinn, so that's nice too. Next up, we have one of my least favorite ghosts in the game, and that is the Mare. So, the Mare ability is if you turn a light on within a certain meter radius of it, refer to the wiki of course, it will have a chance, I don't know if it's guaranteed, but there will be a chance that it'll instantly turn that light off. This can happen once every 10 seconds. If you flip a light switch during the cooldown of this, it will reset the cooldown. So once every 10 seconds, for each individual light switch, you can switch it, and if it ever turns off like instantly, it's probably a Mare. Now the problem with this is any ghost can actually do this, which makes it very annoying. You might just happen to turn on a light and the ghost does an event and that turns the light off, or you turn it on and the ghost turns it off. Um, it doesn't have to be a Mare to do any of that. However, the Mare will typically, if it does do it, turn it off like near instantly, which does make it kind of a dead giveaway, but a bit confusing at first to learn. I'm not even the best at it yet. And I didn't talk about my rank, but I'm 285, 288, which averages out to like, I don't know, Prestige 4 or 5 if you account the actual XP for each of these levels. I'm not good at the math, but yeah, I'm not even the best at determining this ghost. I'm not super high, but that just goes to show it's kind of annoying, at least in my opinion. But also, the Mare can hunt at, I believe, 60% sanity if the lights are off, but only 40% if the lights are on. So this is like one of the few ghosts where I would actually recommend maybe to turn the lights on if you're aware of your sanity and you can manipulate that factor and then know like, okay, yeah, so we're definitely above 40%. Now it's not hunting, but when I turned the light off, then it hunted and we were at 60, whatever. You can kind of manipulate that. The Mare also has an increased chance to do ghost events where it will break the lights in the room it is in when it does the event. So that is another way to tell, but you're mostly going to go off the evidence and it doing that thing where it turns the light off instantly, or ruling out the other ghosts that are associated with the evidence you got. Obviously, that applies to when you are not in a professional or something with 3 evidence where you could have just ruled it out off the evidence. As most of this video is, it pertains to, when you can't just go off those 3 evidence. I mostly play Nightmare, so I can only get 2 evidence, so I kind of need to know the behaviors, you know what I mean? But obviously, a lot of this goes out the window if you don't need to really know it. But yeah, it's a lot better to just roll out the other ghosts, or maybe you'll get lucky with the proc. I just really don't like it. Next up at number 8, we have the Revenant. This is one of the commonly, like, wrong about ghosts. Like, the most commonly, yeah, the ghost most people get wrong. A lot of people say this is the fastest ghost in the game, and that is just wrong. Um, it is a very fast ghost, but its speed is it depends on factors, and it's not the fastest in the game, even with the factors met. Basically, if the Revenant sees you, hears you, or detects your electronics on in your hand, it will bolt towards your ass. It will go very fast, and it'll be on you very quickly. But as soon as it's not detecting any signs of a player, it's not hearing anybody, not seeing anybody, not detecting the electronics in their hands, then it'll be very slow. Like dome, 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 something like that. And then it'll be like dome, 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 dome when it sees the player. Like, you know what I mean? It'll fluctuate like that. Some ghosts can fluctuate in speed like this, but the Revenant is the only one that does it based on that factor. And it won't be a line of sight type speed boost, where it's like gradually he's getting faster. It'll just be like a switch. Like he'll just be fast, and then he'll be slow when he doesn't see you anymore. So you can manipulate his line of sight to kind of tell. Or you can just never let it see you in the first place and hear it be slow the whole time and know it's not any of the other ghosts that could be slow, and then boom, you got yourself a revenant. Very scary ghost, but not the fastest. Next up, we have the ghost that gets cucked. This is a shade. Um, if you're in the room that the shade is in, it cannot hunt, cannot do events, cannot do interactions. Now, I think if you're at 0% sanity, it might still be able to do events. At least that's what I've heard. I don't believe it to be true, but it could be true. Um, but yeah, the problem with this and what makes the ghost kind of a pain is, let's say the ghost is in a small room like a closet or a bathroom. There's a high likelihood that the ghost is going to like to roam and not be in that room because it's small and doesn't have a lot of, room to move in. So it's going to roam and it's going to be in the rooms around its ghost room more often than not. So if you want to actually cuck the ghost and be in the same room as it to make it easier to tell, you actually need to know where it is and be in that room, not in the ghost's room. So, um, it makes it easier with more players in the game because you can spread out and cover more rooms, but it can get kind of tricky if you're in the ghost room and you have a crucifix somewhere and it burns the cruci, and you're like, wait a minute, but I'm in the ghost room, but that crucifix was covering a different room that's connected, and it might have just been in that room. Um, but if it ever does interactions, like if it writes in the book, or if it does EMF 5, or if it just throws things in general, when you're in that room where it's doing that, you know it's not a shade. But if you have a ghostwriting book in there and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and then you're like, you know what, I'm just going to step outside, and you can watch the book from the door, and then it writes in the book like the second you leave, or it tries to hunt like the second you leave, that is like a very shade thing to do, for sure. So yeah, if you're in its room, it cannot hunt. If you're in the room with it, it cannot hunt. But the second you leave, it might just hunt right away. The shades, I believe, cannot hunt until 40% sanity. Refer to the wiki, but yes, they hunt very late as well. Next up, we have the demon. This is the second ghost and the only other, unless you count mimicking these two ghosts that are smudge timeable as part of their kind of mechanic. The demon works kind of opposite of the spirit, and it will not get as long of an effect. So when you smudge a demon and get a timer for a demon, it can hunt again between 60 seconds and 129 seconds. Um, so obviously, if it's past a minute 30, any ghost that isn't a spirit or a demon can hunt then, and that's normal. So if it hunts anytime between 60 seconds and before a minute 30, it has to be a demon or a mimic mimicking a demon, but that'd be terribly unlikely. So that makes it a demon. A demon can also choose to hunt at whatever sanity it feels like. So if you just walk into the building and you know you're 100% sanity because you're on professional or something, and the ghost hunts, well then you know it's a demon. Also, crucifixes will have a longer range, a bigger radius against the demon. You can kind of manipulate this, but it's kind of difficult to. And the timer between when a demon can hunt again after the last one is decreased. So, the cooldown, that being. So, let's say it burns a crucifix, and then it hunts again before 25 seconds are up. It's a demon. This can be kind of hard to tell, but if you get really good and you time it, and it does it, then you know it's a demon. Anything after 25 seconds would be normal, but could still be a demon, and it just didn't feel like hunting early, so it kind of gets annoying. But you can use all those other factors that I mentioned, and it's not a too bad of a time. Kind of a dangerous ghost, though, kind of scary. It can hunt whenever it wants, it can hunt early, even without its ability. Kind of nuts. Next up, we have a kind of a hard ghost to identify if you're unlucky, and that is the Ure. The Ure likes to do stuff with doors. It can slam doors randomly without doing events. Now, ghosts, right, can do events, and they might just slam doors during the events, or they might just do it during a hunt or something like that. Actually, I'm not sure about the hunts, but they can definitely do it during events. Um, but the Ure can do it just randomly. Like, you could be there gathering evidence and stuff, and you just hear a door slam, and nobody did it. It was no teammates. it's a Yurei or a mimic mimicking that, but come on, it's probably a Yurei, right? Um, Also, they can just like touch the front door sometimes, um, and they can double touch doors. So like if you hear a door get touched, like it makes the creaking sound, and then like right after that it does it again, and there's like 2 EMF on it after like a very short interval, and both those EMF readings go away. Like let's say you're using the tier 3 EMF, obviously that's what I'm referring to, and you get two um, indicators, and they both go away at the same time or roughly the same time, and they were both on that door. That's a good way to tell it's a Yurei. They love touching doors, and that's like their main activity that they'll do when they do give you EMF readings. Next up we have Oni. This one has a bit of overlap with Spirit in the fact that it'll be more active when you are in its room. Um, so that's one of the parts of it. Also, the Oni cannot do airball events. So an airball event is the event that makes like a breath sound in your ear or another player's ear, depending on who it's on. Um, However, the Oni can do that event, but what it can't do is the one where you actually see a physical manifestation of a mist, like particle floating in the air. It does like the same sound effects sometimes, but an Oni can do that, but you'll see its form, like it'll walk towards you and then do that sound. The air ball does the same sound. I'm harping on this because people get confused. It does the same sound, but you actually see the ball of air. If that happens, it's not an Oni. Like, there will be no manifestation, it'll just be this ball floating towards a player, and it hits them, and then it makes that sound. Oni cannot do that. The Oni just likes to manifest in its full form. It'll be an actual model of the ghost, not like shadowy or anything like that. It'll do a full form manifestation more often. Doesn't have to, but that's what it does. And it's just overall a more active ghost than the average ghost. The biggest thing for an Oni though is like the opposite of a phantom in that it'll flash and it does its it'll flash like other ghosts, but it spends more of its time visible than invisible and by quite a substantial margin. So it'll still flash and stuff, but it'll almost seem like it's flashing kind of rapidly because it spends so much time visible, making it kind of hard to actually die to because it's really easy to track, it's really easy to see. It'll spend like twice as much time visible as invisible. It'll be invisible for a very short amount of time between those blinks. That's the best way to tell an Oni. Next up, we have Yokai. This one can be a bit of a pain to determine, but it kind of depends. Kind of depends on your team and what's going on. But basically, the Yokai is a very active ghost when you are using the voice chat. So if your mic at the bottom here is white, it's lit up and you are not muted and you're talking and the ghost is very active, maybe try muting your mic occasionally or just being quiet, no offense. And if the ghost gets less active when you're doing that, it might be a yokai. What I like to do is I'll just turn my mic on, I'll unmute it, and I'll be like, get mad, get mad, get mad. And then I'll see, was it active when I was talking? And then it kind of, quieted down. Or, like maybe I'll do it a little bit more than that just to kind of get more chances in, whatever. It'll do its dots more often if you're talking. It'll it'll do activities more often when you're talking. It'll hunt more when you're talking. And when you're talking, it can actually hunt at 80% sanity, which is insanely early for ghosts in this game. So that can also be a nice help. The last piece of advice I can give y'all is when the ghost is hunting, it'll have a terrible time finding you if it's a yokai. Um, I don't remember the exact like meter radius, but it's like radius that it has to be of you to detect you is like a lot closer. So if you have electronics on in your hand, or if you're like holding down the global chat where you can talk to anybody on the map and it's staticking, but the ghost isn't finding you, it's probably a yokai. Like if it just doesn't care, like it seems like it has like Alzheimer's or something, it doesn't like know where to go. Like it's like Biden, my bad. It's probably a yokai. But obviously this can get misconstrued with a Banshee because maybe you're just not the Banshee target so it doesn't care about you, right? But if all those other factors align, it's probably a yokai. I'm also just going to point out a bug with the yokai because this torments me like every day and I hope it gets fixed. But because the yokai is active when you're talking and it can do dots more often when you're talking, some excuse me, sometimes the yokai will do dots, and if you're talking, it can hunt while doing the dots, and it will then hunt invisible, and you will almost not be able to even hear it while it's invisible for the entire hunt. You best believe that this gets your boy killed very often. It's very annoying. I hope they fix it. It makes like yokais like really bad. So like I would recommend if you already got your like dots evidence and all that, and you want to test for a yokai by talking, maybe turn the dots off so that you don't get that bug, cause that thing freaking sucks. And there's nothing you can do about it besides turn those dots off. So just a little bit of advice. That's yokai. Next up at number 14, we have Hantu. So the number one way to identify a Hantu is to have the breaker off, so the power to the house. Turn that thing off, make that switch red, and if you see breath coming out of the Hantu's mouth, like how the player does when it's in a cold room, you know it's a Hantu. The Hantu is the only ghost that does this. It does it no matter what room it's in, as long as the breaker's off. The Hantu will also be very fast when it is in cold rooms and will actually be very slow if it's in a hot room. You can abuse this on the camp maps with the campfires, and if you lead it to the campfire and then it gets really slow near the campfire and it has nothing to do with other factors like a Dio, which we'll get to being close to you, or other things like that, and it just gets slow in the warm, then you know it's a Hantu. Listen to fluctuations in its speed. Listen to how it is in the ghost room versus outside the ghost room. Maybe make sure the electronics are turned off so it doesn't get confused with a Raiju, which we'll get to in a second. That can kind of be a bit of a pain point right there, but not terrible. But yeah, you'll hear it like fluctuate speeds between rooms because it's kind of like a gradual thing. It doesn't just go from fast to slow if the room's cold or warm. It's kind of like based on the actual temperature, like by the number. There's like a few intervals in there, so you can hear that fluctuation in the speed for sure. Next up, we have Goryo. Goryo is a bit of a pain, but the best way to tell a Goryo is that when it does its dots, they will never be seen with the naked eye, basically. So to see a Goryo's dots, you must see them through a camera. There's two ways to do this. You can either have the camera in your hand and you're looking through it, and you can be outside the ghost room, like in the doorway, looking into the room, and you can see the dots on the camera, but you can look around the camera and see it like with your eyes, like be looking at the room from outside the camera, and you don't see the dots there, but you see them in the camera, then you know it's a Goryo. You could have a teammate with you looking in the room, and he doesn't see it, but you see it in the camera. Or you can have the camera set up and be in the truck and see it that way in the dots. However, any dots can be seen in a camera, so I prefer to hold the camera and then see if I see it from outside and within, then I know it's not a Goryo. But if I see it in the camera but not outside, then I know it is a Goryo. So this is also, I'll just mention this, and I'll wrap back to this for other ghosts, but this ghost always gives dots projector as an evidence if you have evidence in your mode. So like if I'm doing nightmare and I only get two evidence, and let's say I have, I'll just do the same example. I have, actually no, I'll do EMF and, what's the other thing that Goryo does? EMF and, I'm slow. EMF and UV. Let's say I have EMF and UV, and I can only get two evidence in my mode, which is Nightmare. I know it cannot be a Goryo, because a Goryo has to give dots, and I only have two evidence that I can get. But if I get UV and dots, then it can be a Goryo. If I saw those dots with my eyes, not with a camera, it can be a Goryo, right? So you can kind of use that to your advantage. I'll get back into that more when I go over, like, at the end, like, all the ghosts with forced evidence. But yeah, that's a Goryo. A Goryo will also never leave its ghost room. Like, well, I shouldn't say that. It'll never change its ghost room. So its favorite room, the room where, it's the coldest, it'll never change. It'll always hunt, or at least it should, always hunt from its ghost room. I don't believe it does. I think it's kind of weird and buggy. But yeah, its ghost room will never change. So if it ever does change, and not courtesy to a cursed object, those might have an effect on that. If you get the ones that change its room or something, um, then yeah, you know it's a Goryo. Next up, we have miling. This one, depending on the map, can be kind of a pain, but the miling's thing is the radius around itself in which you can hear it during a hunt is reduced, so it'll be quieter basically. My good way of determining a miling is the disparity between how loud the heartbeats are of the ghost being near me and its footstep sounds. Now, this obviously comes with experience, but the heartbeat sound will be like very loud, like almost deafening compared to the footsteps. Like you almost won't even hear the feet at all. Um, but the heartbeat is so loud. But the best way to tell would be to have the sorry my Discord. I have someone in the call. The best way to tell would be to know the exact radius of the of like how where you can hear the footsteps from, and to be outside of that for a miling, but within that for a normal ghost, and then you know you didn't hear it. Um, there's also some tricks you can do with flashlights, but that's kind of nerdy and that's like more of an advanced thing. Um, but yeah, if the sound of the hunt ever just randomly cuts off, or it just seems like oddly quiet, or it's hunting and you didn't know it was hunting, but you know you were pretty close to its ghost room, then you know it's a miling. It gets kind of tricky with different elevations because if the ghost is above you or below you on a different floor, it doesn't really work with the milings thing all that well. It has to be kind of like on your level to be accurate. But yeah, the miling will also more frequently make paranormal sounds in the parabolic mic. There is a certain like cooldown for ghosts to make these parabolic sounds, and the milings is shortened, so it has less of a cooldown between each sound. Refer to the wiki for the exact times. But yeah, that is miling. It also seems to be more active when you're near it as well. Um, but that's a lot of overlaps, so not 100% on that one. Next up, we have Onryo. This is the ghost that gets cucked, part 2. So the Onryo gets cucked by candles. He's a pussy. So basically, with the Onryo, candles act as tier 2 crucifix in the fact that they have the same range and prevent the ghosts from hunting when they are within that range. They will also try to avoid these candles, and they blow them out quite often. So if the ghost seems to like to blow out candles, this could be candles that the map provides that you lit up or that you just brought from the truck, preferably the tier 3s because they can burn for an infinite amount of time when you relight them. If it loves to blow them out, if it likes to avoid them and not do much when their candles are in its room, and it likes to, yeah, like if it hunts from right outside the candles, if it loves to do activities elsewhere but the candles, if its ghost room is changing a lot because you're putting candles there, but it was being pretty normal before, right? Then you know it's an Onryo. There's also a trick where it blows out a certain amount of candles and then it hunts. The amount of candles fluctuates based on the amount of players alive, and it's kind of hard to track sometimes, so I don't recommend that if you're just starting out. But definitely try to cuck him with those candles, because we don't like Onryos. See if he's getting less active, see if he's avoiding them and hunting from just outside them. But if he ever hunts right next to a candle and that candle was lit, you can rule that son of a gun out, because Onryos cannot do that. Next up, we have the twins. This is a ghost that some people get kind of confused. No, the twins is not two ghosts hunting you at the same time, and that's just not how it works. Only one ghost is going to hunt you at a time. The way that the twins work is there's basically like two ghosts in the game at the same time, but it only chooses one to actually hunt as. One is 10% slower than an average ghost, and one is 10% faster than an average ghost. This is kind of hard to tell if you only hear the one, but if the ghost hunts a few times and you could tell it was fast and then it was slow, and you can rule out the other ghosts that have alterations in their speed, and it was two different hunts, not during the same hunt that the speed changed, then you can tell it was a twins. The twins also like to interact with the environment at the same time, so you might get two EMF readings in two different rooms at the same time. I like to have two EMFs, especially the tier 3s, and I'll put one in one room and one in a room close by where I was hearing activity at one point, and I'll see if they both go off near the same time. If you have the activity monitor, there's actually a trick you can do where you'll see like a bend in the chart or kind of like a curve where it like goes downward in like a slope and it looks kind of weird, like not like straight lines. You know that that's a twins. It might go up and do that as well. It might do that upward and kind of like curve outward and then back in and then go up. It's weird. You can like Google pictures of it. But yeah, just listen for those two interactions. Listen for its speed to be 10% slower and then 10% faster. You can use BPM things where you like, I've never used it, but you can like click or like tap to like set a BPM. Um, and then you can look that number up and it'll tell you like that's the fast twin speed or something, you know? So there's a bunch of things you can do like that. But yeah, that's the twins. Next up we have Raiju. Raiju is another one of the ghosts that can hunt early, however it hunts early from electronics being near it. Refer to the wiki for the exact percentages. But the Raiju's other thing is that it is fast when it is near electronics. I believe, depending on the map, this radius of it being to the electronics changes, but it's a pretty decent radius, so be mindful of that, that it can be of these electronics and still be fast. But if it's fast and then you take all the electronics away and then it's slow, like you remove the video cameras, put them far away, the photo cameras, turn off the dots, projectors, all that stuff, and then it's slow the next hunt, or if you do it in the same hunt, like you have a flashlight in your hand and then it's fast and then you turn the flashlight off and it kind of slows down, you know it's a Raiju. That's the kinds of things I like to do to kind of determine that. It'll be very fast with those electronics. Definitely not fastest ghost in the game, but it gets up there. It goes pretty quick. Definitely dangerous. Next at number 20, we have Obake. Obake's big thing is that it'll leave fingerprint evidence. It's guaranteed UV, ultraviolet, and there's a chance that when it leaves fingerprint evidence, it will have 6 fingers on its hands. It's not the highest chance in the world. You might even go a whole thing and not see this happen. That's normal. But another thing it does, and this is also kind of a low chance, but every time it blinks and then reappears, it can reappear as a different ghost model. Some people get this confused and think because it hunted as one ghost one hunt, and then the next hunt it hunted as a different model, that it's an Obake. This just isn't true. Any ghost can do that, but if the model changes mid-hunt between flashes when it reappears, that's an Obake. Unless it's mimicking an Obake, but come on, bro. That's just terribly unlucky. That's Obake. And I'll get back to this, obviously, but the forced evidence is UV, so you will always get that if you have um, evidence on. Next up, we have Mimic. The Mimic big thing is that it'll always have ghost orbs. It's like a forced evidence for the Mimic. I know it doesn't show here, and if you go to evidence and you put in ghost orbs, it blanks it out, but it's to troll you. It will always have ghost orbs, even on no evidence, so that makes it pretty easy. And the Mimic's big thing is that it'll mimic the behavior of all these other ghosts on here. The time in which it takes to change who it's like what it's mimicking is I think between like 30 seconds and 2 minutes or something. Refer to the wiki, of course, but on average it's going to be like a minute to a minute and a half or something like that, and then it'll be a different ghost. So if one hunt it's like a revenant and it's super fast, and then it doesn't see you, and then it's slow, and then the next hunt it's like basic as hell, like it's not getting fast or slow, and it's just pretty normal, like a Ure or something during a hunt, then you can probably say it's a mimic. Be careful though, of course. Make sure to rule things out and, be smart about it, of course. But Mimic is not a very hard ghost. It just requires you to know a decent amount about all the other ghosts to kind of be able to tell what it might be at that time, to know you're just not getting it mixed up with something else. and yeah, to know that it will have orbs. So if you do check off orbs, don't forget to also look for the other evidence, which is freezing, UV, and spirit box. Make sure to look for those as well. Next up we have Moroi. This is the fastest ghost in the game. Don't get it confused with the Revenant. This ghost is insanely fast. However, to get to this point, your sanity is the leading factor. Depending on your sanity, the Moroi will either be very slow and not active, or very fast and very active. The lower your sanity gets, the stronger the Moroi becomes. So, if your sanity is at 0%, it'll be maxed out and it'll be the fastest ghost in the game. Its proc makes it very fast, and it also gets line of sight, which most of the other fast ghosts do not get. So both of these combined make it extremely fast, and yeah, the fastest ghost of the game. Also, when you smudge the Moroi, it spends a longer period of time being dumb and disabled and not really aware of you than other ghosts do. I believe it's like 2 to 3 seconds of a longer period of time. So that's pretty nice. It helps you get away from it. So if the ghost kind of starts out being not very active at all, it like is like barely throwing things. Like you almost think it's a shade because it's like hard to find. It's like not really throwing, not really touching, not really doing much. And then it just gets super active like out of nowhere. And it's also like fast now when it wasn't fast before during hunts. Then you probably know it's a Moroi. Um, Also, his ability and his forced evidence is Spirit Box, and his ability is when he gives you a Spirit Box response, he will curse you, and this drains your sanity considerably. So it gets him closer to his max form, his super fast, super active form. So be mindful of that. Maybe don't fish for spirit box responses too much if you're concerned with that, of course. But it could also work to your advantage to weed him out. Next up, we have the Dio. The Diogen. This ghost is like the Shade in that it cannot hunt until I believe 40% sanity. However, if you are a person that likes to hide, you are going to hate this ghost because he can find you no matter where you go. If you're hiding, it doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter if you have your electronics off, it doesn't matter if you're muted, he will find you and he will kill you. He hates you. Um, he goes very fast when he is far away from his target, but as soon as he gets close to the target, he will slow down very considerably. So much so, in fact, that you can actually just walk and he cannot catch up to you, and you can just loop him around like a couch or a table by walking. You never need to sprint, and he will not catch you. So if you're cautious, like if you're worried about it being a Dio, I'd recommend just not hiding and just listening for a few seconds. And if it's very, very fast, um, and you know it's not a Moroi, you have to be careful because they share Spirit Box and Ghost Writing. If you know it's not a Moroi, um, and it could be a Dio, then I wouldn't hide, and I would rule out the Dio first before you hide, because he could just corner you and trap you in your hiding spot, and then if you leave, you're dead, and if you don't, you're dead, unless you have a smudge, right? So definitely be careful of that. The Dio also has Force Spirit Box because he will breathe in the Spirit Box like Darth Vader on a rare chance. It's his like little gimmick thing. It's kind of cool. He'll breathe into the Spirit Box as a response, but it's rare. If it does do this though, you know it is a Dio. And of course the Telltale is he's very fast. He's basically the opposite of a Revenant, kind of. Not that was kind of a bad analogy. He's very fast when he's not near you, and he's very slow when he's near you. Last but definitely not least, because this ghost is actually very fast as well, depending, is Thay at number 24. The 24th ghost in the game is a Thay. So, the Thay's big thing is it will start off the game active. It's basically the opposite of a Moroi. It'll start off the game active and fast, but the more time you spend around it, so within a certain like meter radius of it, you will age the ghost. And this will make it less active and slower. So much slower, in fact, that kind of like a Dio, you can just walk away from it. Not necessarily, you have to like tap your sprint every once in a while to keep your distance, but pretty much you just loop it, and it's so slow, and it doesn't get line of sight speed, which is really nice. So it never ramps up its speed over time with line of sight. Um, but yeah, if you walk into the building and it's like super active, like right away, and you like find it super easy, and then you spend a bunch of time near it, and then it kind of gets like old and like a grandma, and it just isn't doing much, and it's like not hunting at all. I would say it's probably a Thay, especially if like yeah it then hunts and it's super slow. Um, so yeah, you listen and you see it's very active, and then it kind of gets less active. It's fast, and then it gets slow. And also with the Ouija board. So this is one of the ghosts that you can manipulate with the cursed objects. If you go to the Ouija board and you ask the Ouija board, how old are you? And the ghost says like, I don't know, 22. And then you say goodbye so that the Ouija board doesn't get you killed with the ghost hunt. And then you spend some time near the ghost, like 3 minutes or something, because I think it's like every like refer to the wiki, but every so often there's a chance it'll proc the theta age as long as you're within a certain meter radius of it. So like let's say you wait like 3 minutes, and then you ask the Ouija board again, how old are you? And it says like 40, and it was 22. Then you know it's a Thay because it aged, right? It's a pretty cool mechanic there. So Thay's not too bad, but definitely very dangerous, especially at the start of the game. Be careful of this thing. So with that out the way, I'm just going to go over the ghosts that have forced evidence real quick in case, there's some that I missed. So Haunt 2 is forced freezing because he likes the cold. So if you get 2 evidence and you don't get freezing, it cannot be a Haunt 2. It will always get freezing. Goryo always gets the dots. You must see them on a camera though. Um, we have Obake. Obake always gives UV because he does the 6 fingers. Muroi always does the spirit box because he tries to curse you with it. And Dio always does the spirit box because he tries to breathe in it like Darth Vader on occasion. One thing I wish they would do is make the Jinn be forced UV because it does like to touch doors a lot, it would kind of make sense. Like it likes to touch doors, so it leaves UV guaranteed kind of thing. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool, I guess. But there's also nothing that does like guaranteed like ghost writing, so it'd be kind of cool to have something that does that. But that's not a thing. But yeah, guys, this is just kind of like an intro to these ghosts and like small little things that you can kind of try to recognize while you play. There's a lot more to these ghosts, and there's a lot more that goes into identifying them. Um, a lot of it is just ruling out what you know it can't be while also doing your evidence. Like, for example, I'll just throw out some examples. Let's say, let's see. Let's say I get EMF and I get dots. Alright, but I saw the dots with my eyes and the ghost stepped in soul. I know it can't be a Goryo. I saw the dots with my eyes, not with a camera, and it stepped in soul, so it can't be a Wraith. So it's a Raiju or an Oni. If the ghost ever does an airball event, I know it can't be an Oni, and it must be a Raiju. I never even needed to see the ghost hunt, and I can already tell it's a Raiju. But let's say I'm waiting, the ghost hunts, and it seems like it's a normal speed ghost. It has to be an Oni. An Oni's a normal speed ghost, right? So that's one example. So another example, let's say it's ghost writing and ghost orb. So the ghost is fast, but I can't tell why it's fast. So I want to investigate more. Like maybe it saw a player. I don't really know. I'm playing with a bunch of randoms, right? It's fast. It can't be a mare. So I can tell my team like, hey guys, let's let the ghost not see us so we can see what the actual speed of it is. Like no line of sight. Um, Obviously these 2 ghosts don't get line of sight, but you know what I mean. Just don't let it see us so it doesn't proc its ability and for a revenant, and we can see what the base speed of it is if it's like a Thay. And then this hunt, it's like terribly slow, but not enough time passed for it to be a Thay getting slower. It just doesn't have its proc to be a Revenant on somebody. Then boom, I know it's a Revenant, right? Or I do the Ouija board thing and then I know it's a they, or yada yada yada, right? Just one more example. I'll do freezing and I'll do EMF. Um, this one actually kind of sucks. Hold up. I'll do UV and I'll do spirit box. Okay, so this one I can listen for the Pulte bomb. I can loop it around a table, see how much times it throws items. I can watch it blink and see if it's, staying invisible for a long time like a phantom, or I can listen to it between hunts and see if it changes its behavior, or just, while I'm gathering evidence, I can see if it's changing behaviors. Like, it doesn't need to be a hunt, right, for a mimic. Or I can get those orbs, and then I know it's a mimic, right? Because it's the only ghost um, that it could be, right? It's all grayed out, and if I'm on like Nightmare and I can only get 2 evidence, I would still get ghost orbs, so I'd get 3. It doesn't make sense for Nightmare, so it must be a mimic, right? But yeah, guys, I do really enjoy this game. I might get to uploading gameplays of it. I'm not 100% sure. This is just kind of like my introduction into talking about the game. I know a lot of new people play it now, and I don't want people super confused and going into games and spilling misinformation, thinking that they know stuff. There's nothing wrong with being wrong, but there's also something good about learning about the game and really getting good at it, because it is really fun when you can just kind of like you just know what all these ghosts do, right? Like, I just shared like some brief information, but there is so much to learn about all these ghosts, and I'm not like the best in the game, but it's nice to be able to like tell, like, okay, I know it's not this, I know it's not this, I know it's probably this because it did this, that, and the other thing, right? And then you know what to look for, right? So just definitely get out there and play, and get used to these ghosts in your way. Do things how you want to do them, but this is just some advice and some little things that the ghosts do. But yeah, guys, see you in the next one.